Wednesday, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We got a lot of comments on this topic today. A lot of times when people get a promotion, that doesn't always mean they're committed and going to stay. So what did this study reveal, Kia?
Yeah, so we were talking about this morning. There's this recent study that just says some workers are celebrating their promotions by putting in their 2 weeks. So breaking it down, the researchers over at ADP, they said about 29% of people are quitting their jobs within a month after their first promotion. So obviously this is a tool that folks usually use to keep them on the job. Not working right now. That research also showed that the departure rate was similar for workers who weren't promoted. So trying to figure out what's going on here, Gallup also tacked onto the study. It said only 31% of new managers considered themselves engaged at work.
Interesting.
Which is the lowest in about 4 years. Now pair that with more than half of folks actively looking for new jobs, while employers are just going to, I guess, continue navigating these staffing issues. So we ended up asking folks, what's the most important factor when considering a job change? And we got a bunch of responses. I want to talk about that in a minute. But what I thought when I was reading this article and looking at the results of the study, there's plenty of reasons to leave a job. First of all, we could start there. But one of them, and the biggest one as to why this particular trend is happening, is that even with the promotion, you can use that to get a better paying job somewhere else. A lot of times a new offer at a new place is going to give you more money than your current employer, even with that promotion, which I thought
they want to
really
get you there.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a really interesting trend. I really do feel bad for some employers because this is hard.
I think the biggest change that I've seen is before it was about staying at a company, paying your dues for a long time. Now people are literally 1 year, jumping up the ladder much quicker. So that makes sense that they're just waiting for the promotion because they technically check that box, and that allows them to jump to the next steps.
You did ask people what was their most important thing when it came to a job.
Besides pay.
Yeah.
Because we're all supposed to be pay.
This was probably one of the more popular, I think, questions that we've asked. This was several responses. When I was counting them up, though, there were two recurring factors. So people are really concerned about the benefits / work-life balance, which we've seen since the pandemic has been huge.
Yep.
But then also it comes to management. So this is my just 2 cents here. I think this is a shift as well. I don't know how y'all feel. I feel like not too long ago, it used to just be your boss is your boss. And now, I would say over the past, somewhere between 5 and 10 years, people are more concerned with, their leadership, how are their bosses talking to them? How are their bosses treating them? I feel like it used to be, especially for, older generations, it used to just be that's your boss. You don't have to like your boss.
We have talked about that because we've all shared stories of when you came in, you did what your boss said. It didn't matter. You put the gauntlet down and said you do this, and there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
There was almost an intimidation factor.
Yeah, totally. That is perfect.
That was your boss, and whatever your boss said, you did.
Yeah,
and you were hopefully rewarded for it. I mean, that was, if you go back to the longevity of people in the business world and the workforce, that's the way it was traditionally.
Yeah.
And for me personally, that's the way it's always been. I always respected the boss. You looked up to them and maybe didn't agree with them. Maybe you talked about them behind your back, but whatever they said, you did.
Well, everyone does that.
And then hopefully you were rewarded for it.
Right.
In many cases, you were. In many cases, you weren't.
Right.
I guess the world has changed. I'm not, made privy to that because I just continue doing what I've always done. Younger folks coming along, I guess it's a different world.
Totally.
Like you were saying, there was a time when people stayed places a long time.
Yeah.
And you were rewarded for that, but apparently it's not the case now.
Yeah, especially since the pandemic. I mean, I think people really shifted their priorities. They were home with their family more. They weren't commuting and driving into the office. And then, we saw a lot of bosses would say, okay, back to full time, and people would be like, I don't want to do that. And so there are so many jobs where they are only coming into the office 2 days a week. And, I switched my shift to be more present with my family and see my kids after school. So I think the pandemic really had people reassessing what kind of job they wanted, how much did they want to commute, did they want to work from home, because a lot of jobs that didn't used to offer this work from home option, now they have it now.
The biggest thing is now pretty much you're in the driver's seat, because before you were at the liberty with that. Now everyone needs the employees so bad. Ever since we had that, you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room and say, well, actually, I would rather have this. I have another offer with this. So, and I've also noticed even even in our industry. So our industry, pretty much, you start at the bottom, really small markets, and then you work your way up. Steps are almost being skipped with that. So I think a lot of people are skipping that first step, that you start at the bottom, work your way up, that some people, even from college, are just immediately going into that medium tier, which is throwing things all off. So, yeah.
I think for folks that don't know, maybe like the market aspect of media jobs, it's like small market. I'm trying to think, what is a tiny city in the Carolinas that we can kind of
Well, I mean, if you take it like a New Bern, little Washington, North Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina, those are the small markets.
Right. So it's like starting in a Greenville, and then a mid-step would be like probably like a Columbia.
Yeah, exactly.
And then coming to Charlotte, which I think is, the last time I checked, was Market 21.
Yeah.
So this is a large market.
And after Charlotte, then it's top 5.
Exactly, for a lot of folks.
New York, Chicago, LA.
So, it's different. People are starting out of college here. And
they are, without a doubt. There's a lot of experience being missed.
Yes.
That was when I was coming along. You have to have experience.
Yes.
It was, imperative.
Your
resume
resume
coming
wasn't
in green
at all. My
you had some knowledge. There are people coming to work that don't really have the vast knowledge. They just have a degree, and we need workers.
Right. And we're relying on you folks like Larry to give us your experience.
Yeah, well, so. I'll be around a couple more years.
John Kelly saying the culture of a company is a huge factor.
Culture,
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes.
And
oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to enjoy said I'd stay on the job. I'm not sure what she was referencing to.
I know,
what we were talking about. What were you going to say?
Yeah, so what I think too is, I think the pandemic kind of pushed this already growing issue just over the cliff, because I think it's no secret that over the past, a handful of decades, just stuff is harder to pay for. And so I think that really the tolerance and the patience of workers, it kind of just gets shorter and shorter the less easier it is to pay bills. And I think that's what's it's kind of been boiling. And then the pandemic, once these options had to be offered for safety, it was we're not giving it up. And I think that was a huge thing too. And then on top of the fact that more people are figuring out how to make money without a 9-to-5, I think that's the big question when we see that employers are struggling to hire.
They have a couple of jobs.
They're door
and they want the flexibility.
Exactly.
I read an article on a young kid that is a driver for DoorDash. He made $170,000 in a year.
Yep.
He's the number one. He was the number one DoorDasher.
Right. This is not the norm.
He was the number one DoorDasher.
I was like, well, you're going to be seeing me delivering your food near you. That's the new thing.
Is that not crazy?
Wow.
How
many hours a week is
I don't know.
that?
I'm sure that's his full time, and I'm sure he does it on weekends.
Right. And it depends on where you live.
Yeah, totally.
And then where you're doing this at.
And who's giving you the tips?
Exactly.
Yes. Are they giving tips or are they not giving tips? Melissa saying, I've been a banker for 24 years, working at home for over 5, but I've been promoted and rewarded for my hard work. And I think when you do feel valued, when employers feel valued, they're more loyal. They tend to stay. But it's interesting with this study. Like you said, some people get that promotion and then they use it as a stepping stone or leverage for whatever that next job or place is that they want to go.
That's why I think studies are so interesting. You don't know what's going on behind the numbers. I wonder if they could talk to respondents, if there was maybe that follow-up question that says, okay, they gave you the promotion, this is good for your resume, this is good for your bank account, but how does that stack up to how someone is talking to you behind closed doors? I think that's got to be a factor that's going on here too. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think you want to check as many boxes because let's be honest, it's a job. You have to work. So you just want to say, I was like, all right, I like my coworkers, I like my bosses, pay is okay. I was like, this is good enough. Because really, sometimes the grass isn't always greener. That extra $5,000-$10,000 once you get there is wow, I gave up so much.
So many times that's the truth. I found this so.
Yeah.
When I was in radio, especially working here in Charlotte, and a lot of my friends went. Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, every one of them said, you know what, Larry, it's really no different up here. Same kind of problems, same issues, and the lifestyle in Charlotte is so much better than that place.
Cheaper to live too. Well, at that point.
Just everything all in all. So, you're not missing anything. That's okay.
I'm happy here.
Bloom where you're planted. Keep commenting. Let us know what you think. What's the most important thing for you when you're searching for a job? We'll see you back on air at 11:30 and